Hello, namaste. How are you all today? So I am back with another practice video. Our last time's practice video received a tremendous response from all of you. All of you appreciated that video a lot, and each one of you actually asked me to do such types of video more often. So I decided to do that type of video again, and here I am back with practice video part 2. So I hope each one of you are ready with the essential material, your henna cone and paper, so we can start our practice from here. Our last video we stopped on teardrop elements, and that's the very reason we will start our this practice with teardrop elements. For teardrop element we need our base, and we will start with very simple swirl as a base, and on top of swirl we will layer our teardrops. And as I say, teardrops seems very easy in look, but when we try to draw them they are a little bit challenging. Especially layering teardrops is a little bit challenging. You can attempt teardrops using simple technique, our normal traditional technique, or you can draw them with gulf technique. In today's practice we will see some variation of teardrops, and then how to use this teardrop cluster in our design, that we will include with some other designs. With teardrops we can layer vines with those paisley ending, and those paisley also you can draw with a traditional technique, or you can attempt them with gulf technique. Choice is yours. It's always going to be your decision how you want to draw those particular elements. Here I am sharing both technique with all of you, and this is one teardrop and vine cluster. I will show you one more this type of cluster, so you will have better idea how you can use all this element to create various clusters of your choice. Like in first cluster I use very simple swirl. Now instead of this simple small swirl, you can create big swirl with a little bit thicker base and heavy dot in the center. So that is a one variation of a base design. On top of that base design you can layer as many teardrops as you want and the way you want them. These are very basic tear cluster. I know I am using very basic one, but I am very sure with all this inspiration you will come up with something more beautiful of your own. So in today's practice I'm showing you how to use this tear cluster in our design along with zigzag checks. Yes, Mansi has requested that she wants to see zigzag checks and how to draw them. So including this tear cluster I am using zigzag checks in our today's practice. Actually these zigzag checks are really very easy. For that we draw zigzag line. Now how will you draw these zigzag lines? To draw this zigzag line, actually your pressure on the cone is very minimum and the edge of your cone is touching the surface. But be careful, the tip of your cone is not touching the surface completely, but it's a little bit slanted. The way we hold ball pen or pen, yeah, exactly same way our cone will be touching our surface, and with the zigzag movement we will draw these zigzag lines. Now these zigzag checks have many variations, like you can combine zigzag line with straight line. There is a one combination, and there is another combination like both the lines are zigzag, like vertical and horizontal, both the lines are zigzag. So that is also one variation of zigzag checks. The only thing is the control over your cone, because as I said, the pressure on your cone is very minimum edge is touching the surface, and your movement is zigzag. Actually, in one of my special video for lines, like where I have shown all type of different lines in that video, I have shared how to draw this zigzag line, but one more time I am showing you here, and I am very sure with practice you will achieve this, because so many people are having trouble with faint line. The way we achieve faint line, exactly same technique is involved in this zigzag line. The only movement is zigzag. So yeah, our two main elements of today's practice is tear cluster and this zigzag checks. Actually, it is a very good exercise to practice your mehendi this way, like on paper. Start from any point and keep going in any direction you want. Always practice, if you are a beginner, always practice your mehendi on the paper without limiting yourself to like any boundaries, because when you practice on hand you have to worry about the layout and how to adjust your design in that particular area, and those worries actually spoil your design because you are not used to so many elements. So I always suggest all beginners, practice your mehendi the way you practice doodle. Start from any point, use any elements you want to use or you want to practice or you want to try, layer them on top of one another and see which design you can create. So don't limit or bound yourself to any boundary. Practice this way and see how productive and how creative you become. Okay, now time for this 3-layer border. You might have seen me using these lines, 3-layer lines, very often, as I said in my first practice video also. Whenever I draw like any borders or I give outline to any element, I always try to use this line variation in my design. So yeah, and then on top of those lines I will use frill, because as many people told me that they are still having problem drawing frills. So whenever you get chance, just add frill elements, so you will have enough practice of this frill element. And whenever you practice, try to slow down and create tiny and intricate frill, as tiny, as intricate as possible. So because you are practicing, you can afford to do that. And because I have seen when you create very big frills, it actually spoils the entire look of your design. So try to create and practice delicate intricate frills. And on top of this frill we are layering dot leaves. In last practice we used dot paisleys, and I showed you how to draw this dot paisleys because it has a movement of curve C. For this dot paisley we are using straight movement, and that dot leaves we are layering on top of frill. Now I am drawing here with dot with straight line, but if you want you can use them as a vines, like in little bit slanted way. So any variation you want to practice, you can practice here. Now is in this particular portion we will practice our zigzag checks, and for that the pressure on my cone is very low and speed is very controlled. Actually these are very easy, only thing you need practice. And once you get hold of this movement, zigzag movements, then you can do this in too much speed. Actually if you see very carefully, then the way cone is moving is like the way cardiogram point is moving. Yeah, it's funny. The only thing about this zigzag checks is movement. So as I said, once you get hold of that movement, these checks are really very easy. And here I am combining the zigzag checks with straight line. So in our last video we did 4 dots near the junction, but in this checks we will do tiny dot with straight line. So near junction we will create tiny flower. Now the thing you have to keep in mind is, like, here our checks are not very big, so we will create this tiny flower near one junction, the next junction we will leave, and then we will draw this tiny flower to the another junction. So these are the tiny points. If you create these tiny flowers at each and all junctions, then it will all merge together and it can ruin the look of this entire design. So as I say, these are very tiny points, but if you keep all those points in your mind, so when you create your own design, you will come up with something beautiful, and you like avoid making mistakes very often. I really like this checks design, but as I said, I always keep saying you can experiment with more variation and come up with something more beautiful. Okay, as usual, again I will layer this border with my 3-layer lines, and this thick line sometimes is very difficult to achieve because sometimes you get very bumpy and uneven line. Actually, because of light reflection, you might feel that my line is also something like that. Okay, the another technique to achieve this thick bold line is draw 2 parallel lines and fill in between gap with thick line. Now that is little bit time consuming, because the same line if you draw with one stroke, you can finish your work faster. So we always look for all these shortcuts whenever we draw our design, so we can speed up our design. But if you are not getting perfect thick line, then for a beginning you can use this technique of 2 parallel lines. Now we have practiced slanted border, so now let's practice curve line. And again this curve line will have 3-layer line, because we have to practice our all types of line in all directions. Now this 3-layer line I will layer with frills, because I have seen when beginners practice frills on straight line, this seems to get it very perfect. Many times with lots of practice you get frills, perfect frills on a straight line, but the same frill when you try on a curve line or on a circle or on a petal or any other shapes, it seems challenging, because there you have to adjust your width, height with the shape. So that's why we have to practice frill here on curve line. Now here I am not drawing frill only one layer, but I am layering one more frill layer on top of this first frill layer. And again I am back with the small round petal on top of the frill. Yes, I am using same element again and again, but you have to understand all these elements have been used on like a different layout on a different shapes, and that's the most important thing. Sometimes one shape you can achieve like in a very simple layout, but the same element becomes challenging when the layout is little bit tricky. So that is the main agenda of all these practices, that yes, we are practicing same elements but in a different layout. So here I have used these round small petals and I topped that with thick line. Now again we are using those dot leaves, the vines on top of this border. Now one more thing I want to tell all of you, that yes, we are practicing everything. Every time I can show you only little bit portion of the practice, but you don't stop where I have stopped in my practice. You can continue with the practice and can add more elements. Like for example, in last video I stopped practicing at teardrops. Now you can again practice like practice 1 and combine this practice with from this teardrop cluster, and don't practice only once or twice. Keep practicing till you feel satisfied with your work. So every time you will improve a little. And with each and every practice, you actually examine and study your design where it lacks. Somewhere you find your faults, so immediately practice again and correct those faults, so that way you will improve very fast. You have to learn to see mistakes in your own design, then your improvement become very fast. Again, here I am using 3-layer lines and layering it with frills. Now I am stopping here with my practice, but before I go, I want to leave this practice on one challenging element, and that is our tiny simple Gulf flower. Now, technique of that Gulf flower I have already shown in one of my previous tutorial videos, but I will again show the technique in my upcoming practice video when we will use this element in our practice. But to keep you charged up, challenge and motivate, I am leaving this practice on that particular note. So if you want, you can practice beforehand. This type of simple Gulf flower you can achieve with our simple technique and with the Gulf technique. As I said, I will explain this in detail in our next practice. So keep practicing, all of you, and as I said, don't stop where I have stopped. You can continue with your practice and come up with more elements. And if you want to share your practice with me, please send me message on my Facebook page. And I would rather say, be your own critics, start seeing your own faults, then you will improve faster. So I hope you all have liked this video. Stay tuned with us because more surprises are on the way, as I keep saying in my all videos. So bye bye for now, till see you next time. Okay, bye bye. Thank you everyone.